Hello, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? I am going to be doing my analysis like normal on Thursdays. I like doing it late as often as I can because this way I can talk about the lineups when they come in and talk about any differences and why and if that really changes anything. For example, with Chicago not having Rizzo in the lineup, how much better does that make Castillo? Obviously, a lot. But those are things that it's better to talk about when you actually have the news. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm just doing the last thing I need to update on the phone here. All right. So let us get into it. How's everyone doing today? Hope everybody is doing well. I did a bunch of work as much as I could. Tried to push through it today. So let's get started because I don't want to waste any time. I want to get as much done as I can, talk about as much as I can. So first up is I'm going to talk very briefly about the Indians and O's showdown in case you are playing that. I know a lot of people like doing the showdowns. I think that the obvious play, obviously, is going to be Trevor Bauer. I think if you want to be really sneaky, you're going to be able to get a cheap Davis, Roberto Perez, and Wilkerson. And I think that those three hitters have been in fantastic form over the last week. So I would try to build around those four with Trevor Bauer, the captain, if you possibly can. I know Baltimore is a trickier team than people give them credit for, and Bauer has been prone to being tremendously wild. But Baltimore can be struck out, and we've seen Bauer's strikeout upside. There's nobody on this slate, the showdown slate, that is, that's going to get Bauer's upside. I don't think any of these dudes are primed to hit 300. That's not true. Dan Straley's pitching, but I still would say Bauer's upside is absolutely fantastic, and I think he's safer in terms of floor because he's going to get some points and probably a whole lot of them, whereas a lot of people on the offense are going to get points, but we don't know how it's going to be spread around necessarily. So again, I think that if you want to take a Davis or Wilkerson or both, they're cheap and they'll help you fit in more of the expensive Indians players. In terms of the Indians, again, I think Roberto Perez is fantastic. Luplow has been in fantastic form. Although he's a lefty masher, he's going against a righty. It doesn't matter. The Orioles really are that bad that you can kind of count on him for a relatively cheap price. And then big fan of Lindor. He's been hot and cold, but he certainly has the highest upside of any of the hitters here. That dude can do anything, and he's one of the best hitters in the game. So let's move on to the super, super fun main slate, which starts at 6:40. I told you guys a few days ago that we should expect more main slates to start in the 6 o'clock hour because a lot more teams are starting to play games in the 6 o'clock hour. This one is a fun one, and I'm really glad it's included, at least on DraftKings, in the main slate. We have Luis Castillo and Jose Quintana going against each other. I would say Luis Castillo is the overall best pitching option that we're going to have today. I know the Cubs are a great offense, but they strike out enough, and he has been looking like a Cy Young pitcher over the course of this season. And I wouldn't at all be surprised if when you start seeing those things trickle out, like the quarter year, who do you have as a Cy Young if Luis Castillo isn't winning on a bunch of places? If you look at his numbers, as I talked about, when I look at the pitcher's numbers and the hitter's numbers, I look at the full season, but when I'm doing analysis, I like to see who's hot and who's cold. So for pitchers, I look at the last 2 weeks, which is 2 or 3 starts generally. And then the batters, I look at the last 7 days. So if you're looking at the last couple weeks, Luis Castillo has a strikeouts per 9 of almost 14. He's walking almost 5 per 9, which is terrible, but his whip is only 1.00. So I've explained this in the past as well. When you are a dominant strikeout pitcher and you have a very difficult hitter, it makes more sense to pitch around him when you know that the next hitter is going to be a lot easier for you to strike out. So there's a lot of times we see high strikeout pitchers with higher walk rates because they don't have a problem going after certain dudes and letting other dudes get on base because they're not really a worry. And we've seen that from Castillo. The batting average against over the last couple of weeks is 140, which is absolutely fantastic. His ERA 2.77, FIP 2.64, so even better than that, and his xFIP even better than that, 2.35. So I think it's safe to say that he is the best play. I would do what you can to try to fit him in. There is only one Cub who's been hitting extremely well lately in the last week, and that's Chris Bryant. So I can understand taking a one-off there, but as I always try to warn you, he is an extreme normal splits guy, and Castillo is as well, and that's two righties going against each other, which means the advantage by far goes to the pitcher or Castillo at this point, who is, again, pitching like a Cy Young candidate. So 10-6 on DK, 10-3 on FanDuel. I think that there are enough cheap bats that you can absolutely run with him. So what we really need to talk about is Quintana, because that is going to be a lot trickier. Quintana is right around the middle of the board lately, and unfortunately, I think that makes him unplayable at 9,200. If he were in the 7 to 8K range, I would be a really big fan of Quintana, but this is an underrated Reds lineup that's been hitting pretty well since Senzel moved to the top of the lineup. It's underrated, and while I don't think that the Reds are going to score 20 runs today, I do think that Quintana's upside is grossly limited. If you look at his recent form again in the last couple of weeks, his strikeouts per 9 is under 6, 5.7, which is terrible. He's walking 3.6 per 9, which again is bad with the whip of 1.34. Excuse me. And then, unlike Castillo, we see an increase from his ERA to his FIP to his xFIP, which indicates that he's not pitching as well as he has been getting credit for. So I think that while I'm not a fan of Quintana, there are a couple of Reds bats that I would look up as one-offs, particularly Suarez, who's been on fire lately. Excuse me, there's something caught in my throat. And then Casali is 3,300 as a catcher, and he has been doing well for the at-bats that he's been getting. There aren't a lot of bats here, though, because Quintana is a tricky pitcher. But again, if you're going to go somewhere here, Castillo first, and then I would take a couple of Reds bats, and then maybe Chris Bryant for after Castillo comes out of the game. You never know. Excuse me. Hi, Edgar. I will absolutely get to that question. Pittsburgh, San Diego, Minnesota, Seattle. Which pitcher do you trust tonight on the GPP slate? So I can skip around to that and then go back and do the full analysis. I don't mind whatsoever. If you're talking like a night slate, what I would say is Trevor Williams. For sure. The one thing you have to understand about him is he's a good pitcher. Hey, Mike, how's it going? I am feeling slightly better, but it's still, I still don't have words for how bad it's been since I fell. I don't really understand why or what happened, but I have a doctor's appointment coming up next week. So it takes a while to get in, but I'm hoping that, maybe I'll be able to get another injection or something, because something happened when I fell with my hip that's not right. I mean, everything's been as bad as it normally is. But, hey, I fight. There's some days I can't, but I'm always trying to do something. I can't give up on it. It would make me crazy. So I'm going to keep doing what I do. as best I can and as much as I can, believe me. So I think Trevor Williams is a good pitcher. If you look at his recent form lately, we have a strikeouts per nine of about 7, which is about what you'd expect. His walks per nine about 1.4, which is great. And that's with a BABIP of 378, so his whip's 1.46. So people are just getting lucky. And you can kind of see that his ERA is 3.46, but his FIP is only 2.02. So even though he's been getting unlucky, he's still been pitching relatively well in every way. And I would definitely take him against the Padres as the best pitcher on a smaller slate if you're doing those 4 games. And then the next pitcher I would take, and I think a lot of people are going to think this is crazy, is Eric Lauer. Now, I know his form recently has been terrible, but I think you need to consider the fact that the last 2 games he's pitched were in Colorado, and he is a curveball dominant lefty, and then against the Dodgers, who are absolutely the best offense in the National League by far. So I think that Lauer against a weaker Pirates offense, you have Marte, who's been hitting well, Josh Bell, who's been playing like an MVP, but the bottom half of the order, Reynolds, Cervelli, Newman, and Tucker have been batting absolutely terribly as long as my projected lineup is right. Frazier is not doing that well. Melky Cabrera's had a good stretch, but he's starting to cool down. So I think that Eric Lauer back at home, where the curveball is going to be able to be dominant again. We saw him go on a stretch of runs where he's just about 20 DKP. And for his price, which was super low, what was it, like 67? I was going to say 76. Dyslexia, unless that's FanDuel. That is FanDuel. He is 6,800 on DraftKings, which is, I remember the FanDuel price for some reason. 6,800 is far too cheap for Eric Lauer, especially if he's going to be able to get you 15 to 20, which I do expect. And I would trust him and his abilities more than the other pitchers. And I will get to that because you also asked about Minnesota and Seattle. I do not trust Pineda and Swanson. First of all, look at the run totals, Vegas, which is a good way. Yeah. No, I don't. I think Castillo is good chalk. I think that I can check ownership in a couple minutes. I'll get into that in a minute. I think that ownership is going to be healthy, but I don't think that it's enough to warrant fading him, given how much higher his upside is than any other pitcher on this slate. There is nobody even remotely close to being able to do what Castillo does. If there were, a couple sneaky 9K pitchers or, even an 8K pitcher that has been pitching extremely well that can get you 30 to 40, I would say, go for it. But there's nobody who has had recent form in this late slate that would warrant fading Castillo. And I think that with the amount of mass entries that set caps and the amount of people who are going to try to get cute, I think the ownership on Castillo might be high, but it's still going to be lower than it should be, again, given how much better he is than any other option. And I think that when you are doing your slate analysis, you need to consider positional scarcity as if you were doing a draft for like a yearly fantasy league. The fact that someone is 10K, but the next best pitcher is only projected to get, significantly less points than him means that as much of a chance as it is that he implodes and sinks everything, it's still more of a chance that he does well, and you can differentiate yourself in other ways while getting on the obvious best play. The worst thing you could do is say, damn it, why didn't I play Castillo? How's it going, Vladimir? That's awesome, from Russia. I can't believe that's true. I'm not international bathrobeing it, but that would be really cool. But yeah, I think that this is more of a game theory thing, that Castillo, and anytime you see something like this, if we're talking about, if Bauer were on this slate, if the Cubs and Reds game were the 610 and the Straley Bauer game were the 640, and Bauer was the only guy and he was 10-8, I would say the exact same thing about Bauer. His upside is going to be so much higher than everybody else that it just doesn't make sense to fade him if you're talking about doing one lineup. If you're doing mass multi-entry, if you're doing 150, 20 lineups, 20 or more lineups, even 5 or more lineups, I'm fine with, differentiating as much. You don't want to have 100% if you're doing 5 lineups of anybody. But at the same time, I wouldn't, go 20% if you're doing 5 lineups. Like, don't try to take a stand by going significantly under what the field is going to be, again, because of, weighing the positional scarcity in with what you're going to see from him in terms of potential, in terms of the matchup, and in terms of everything else. So let me get back to what I was talking about for Edgar. Sorry, I can balance all this stuff. That's the debate training. So if you're looking at a couple of things, again, Pittsburgh, San Diego, game total of 7.5. San Diego is going to get 3.9 runs, Pittsburgh 3.6. Meanwhile, Twins and Mariners are projected to get 4.9 and 4.6 runs, or 4.8 and 4.7 runs, depending on how you split that up, how you split the Vegas total up. So that's at least a run more per team. So if you're doing late slate, again, don't overvalue the win. Play Williams and Lauer. They're the much safer plays, and they're going to be significantly better environments. On top of that, oh, nice. Maybe he is from Russia. That's really cool. And then on top of that, one of the things that you have to consider is, while people do overstate weather a lot of times, there's slight boosts depending on how the wind is. When you're getting in the double digits, or the mid double digits especially, you really do start to see that have an effect. And the wind in San Diego is going to be blowing in from left field at 15 miles an hour. So even if they get the ball up, that ball is going to wind up back in the field of play. So I think that, given everything, those two are going to be fantastic options tonight. And I'm going to get into that when I look at the whole thing, but I can talk about that in more of a holistic way. And then to pivot to your second question, do I see anyone else other than Steph Curry as captain in DK Showdown tonight? Yes. I don't know if... Okay. So if you looked at the first game, one of the things that the Blazers got to do, not that it really worked out for them, obviously, that was terrible for them. And as someone who wants the Warriors to lose, but one of the things that they one of the things they did in the regular season, and I talked about this briefly towards the middle of the year, maybe around January, is that Portland at the beginning of the season, when Harkless was injured, was one of the, if not the worst defensive team against small forwards in the sport. And then when Harkless came back, he immediately went to work, and they became significantly better. Harkless jumped into the top 10 for small forwards and DRPM and pretty much stayed there the entirety of the year. He was the only member of the Blazers that was there consistently. Nurkic went in and out, but nobody else, Aminu went in and out as well, but no one else really touched it or stayed there as consistently as Harkless did. So when the Blazers were playing the Warriors earlier in the season, Harkless was on Durant for the most part. Obviously, things change, as the game flows. I try to generalize because I'm not going to be able to talk about every eventuality. Pardon me. But what wound up happening in game one is they wound up being able to use Harkless on Curry more. So what I think is that while Curry certainly is the best play for captain, he certainly has the highest upside. I think that you have to play him. I'm not saying fade him. You'd play him in the util slot. I don't think it's crazy to take a chance that Lillard bounces back, or that Clay excuse me, profits from the lackluster defense of Lillard and McCollum. If Harkless is going to be spending that much time on Curry, and we all know how quickly Clay gets his shot off, and the fact that I believe he dribbled the ball less per shot than any other player in the NBA, and it was like Ruthian, how much the gap was between him and the next player, and the next player was like Curry. So the fact that Clay is going to be relatively ignored, and I don't mean that they're not going to have anyone on him, but I mean that the people they're going to have on him are going to be lesser than the people they might have on other people. I think that Clay, for the savings that you get, is a sneaky play for captain. I think that he has that 50-point upside, and we've seen from Clay plenty of times that 8 threes and a quarter thing, where if he does that, he's going to blow it out for you. And if he's hot, on top of that, then you are going to see him get more touches and more looks, which is going to be even better for him, which is why, again, I think you need to play both, because if he gets hot, Harkless will probably switch to him, and then Curry's going to get the shots up. But I think that it's Curry is a better play, but no, I don't think so. I don't think that at this point it's going to matter at all, Mike Fong. I don't think travel time is going to affect the Blazers. I think it's going to be a full-throated game, 100%, and it's going to be a fantastic game. I think that I don't think it's going to be particularly close again. I just don't think that the Blazers are going to be able to hang with the Warriors. Just if you look at it, I would have much rather seen the Nuggets go against the Warriors, as someone who does not want the Warriors to win. But I think that we also need to consider the fact that Durant is supposed to be back in Game 3, from what I read. So, again, this is going to be the last time that these dudes might have. I think Aminu is not going to get more minutes until Durant is back. I think that once Durant is back, they're going to have no choice but to play him as much as they can. I think that if you are looking at value, let me double check, because I had a couple dudes. Pardon me for the brief. I mean, Harkless, it depends on what you mean by value. So I have a controversial bit of value, one of those things that you're not going to want to play, and it's going to hurt you to play. But if Andrew Bogut is going to get 10 minutes and get 10 points at 1,400, that's 8, 9, 10 times value, and that lets you fit in a whole bunch of people. And the reason that I like him now as opposed to previously, where I would not play him for any price, even when he was listed as the starter towards the end of the Houston series, is that Houston wound up by the end of the year having one of the best center defenses. As lackluster as Capella is as an individual defender, Houston was systematically fantastic at shutting centers down. So I didn't trust Bogut to have any sort of ability to produce, even if he was getting 15, 20 minutes, considering how low down the line he is. But given the fact that Cantor was statistically the worst defender at center on the season, and the fact that while a hustler and while he's been looking fantastic, don't get me wrong, that shoulder is injured. I do think that Bogut has a chance to get, what did he get, 13 last game? 13.5 at 1,200. That's more than 10 times. So again, it's not going to light the world on fire, but that'll let you fit in, 4 of the big guys if you want. And that is a much sneakier way, because a lot of people are not going to be on Bogut whatsoever. Excuse me. I also think that if you believe this game is going to blow out, which is a reasonable expectation, then the Quinn and Jerebko plays are decent. Quinn and Jerebko both got a bunch of decent run. As I've talked about through the course of the articles, when you're looking at the value, especially on something like this, on a smaller slate, you want the backups that also get blowout run. The Warriors were notoriously bad this season in terms of the backups not even getting the blowout run because the backups were still like generally older dudes that they wanted to protect. So they'd play the backups limited just like they play the starters like Iggy. And then, they'd let, Jordan Bell play instead of Looney, and McKinney play instead of Iguodala, et cetera, et cetera. People that wouldn't get necessarily any backup minutes were getting the blowout run. But now we're seeing, especially with Durant out, Jerebko and Cook get a decent chance at getting some. I know, Livingston's always going to be a cog in that works, but I still think that if you're going punt and you don't want to play Bogut, which is perfectly understandable, I have no problem looking at Cook and Jerebko. I think that Curry and Jerebko and Cook have just about as much chance of getting 15 to 20 points as one another. So I'm definitely not going to go up to 2,600 when I can save all that scratch. But I think it is sneaky to take a Klay Thompson or a Dre. I don't like taking Dre because of his limited upside, but we've seen him shoot a lot more recently with Durant out. So the chance of the triple-double is still there, and he's still going to get his shots. But I think that this is a Portland team that's weak enough at the perimeter that, as long as it's Thompson or Curry in the captain or Lillard, if you want to go, if you think this game really does stay close, I think that those three are perfectly legitimate. So that answers your questions. Mike, I answered your question. I don't think Castillo is a good fade. Vladimir, that was a question in Cyrillic, and I don't read Cyrillic, so I have no idea. And then I answered that, and then I answered Andrew. So let me get back into my baseball talkings. First, I'm going to take a sip of this, and then I will get back into it. So I finished up with the Cubs and the Reds. Pardon me again. Maybe one day I'll get like a decent amount of views, and that'll be pretty nice. And then Sprite Zero will be like, "Hey, here's money." I'll be like, "Hey," or free Sprite Zero. Oh, I'll take those. Like they talk about it on TV shows, and then they suddenly get like a pound of like pork chops delivered to the studio. I'll take a pound of pork chops. Give me some pork chops. Damn it. Okay. Anyway, so the one thing I want to talk about is Schwarber really quickly. Leading off is a sneaky play. He's been in bad form lately, but Schwarber is, as an extreme normal splits guy, as you're going to see, if you dig into his career numbers, his OPS against lefties is 635 and it's 842 against righties. His ISO is 132 against lefties and 259 against righties. I mean, the difference is night and day. So as long as he's not playing against a lefty, he's always a chance to hit a home run. I think that with Bryant hot and with Schwarber 3,100, that's a decent GPP risk to take. I think Castillo is, again, far and away the best pitcher here. So I'm not saying that I like taking a Cubs stack or even a Cubs mini stack, but if you have 3,100 left over and an outfield spot to fill, you can do a lot worse than a Schwarber leading off against any righty whatsoever. All right, next up, let's look at the Cards and the Braves. This is another one that's kind of sneaky for a couple of reasons. And I'm going to bring this up as well. I've talked in the past about how Tehran, who is starting for the Braves, is one of those pitchers who has extremely good numbers against righties or a lot of success against righties, but has a complete inability to get left-handed batters out. So when he's going against a right-handed dominant lineup, those are the times that you can get Tehran for under-owned and underpriced compared to what he is, because he's a good pitcher. He just is a good pitcher against righties and not against lefties. And if you go and look, and I got this up as well because I wanted to share this, when I look at splits and I put my lineups page together, I dig into everything I can. So if you look at Tehran's career splits, and this will take me a second because this is pretty significant. The batting average against lefties, 255, righties, 217. On base percentage, lefties 339, righties 265. Slugging, lefties 441, righties 350. WOBA, lefties 338, righties 238. Then you can go down to FIP. His FIP against lefties 5.08, against righties 3.36. His XFIP against lefties 5.01, and versus righties 3.55. That tells you that, again, what I've been saying is backed up by any and all numbers that you can find. Tehran is a good pitcher against righties and an absolutely awful pitcher against lefties. His his strikeouts per 9 against righties is almost 9. Against lefties, it's 6.8. His walks per 9 against righties is 1.7. It's 4.2 against lefties. It's, again, stark. He gives up 1 home run per 9 against righties, 1.3, which is a significant difference against lefties. It's just, there is no justification for playing Tehran against a lineup that is full of lefties. Now, the Cardinals, are not. And that is going to be an interesting choice that you have to make, because Tehran is only 8,000. And while Goldschmidt has been absolutely on fire, the Cards have Goldschmidt, DeYoung, Ozuna, Martinez, and Molina back to back to back to back to back, which is 5 pretty easy outs. He can pitch around Carpenter and then try to go after Goldschmidt, which, again, Goldschmidt's been hot, so I wouldn't mind taking him as a one-off today even. But assuming that Tehran continues the success against righties that he's shown throughout the course of his entire career, backed up by any and all numbers, then he's going to have a pretty decent chance of getting through the 2 through 6 slot. And then he has Adam Wainwright batting 9th. So even though Fowler and Wong have also been absolutely fantastic recently, and both are lefties, or Fowler's a switch hitter who will be batting lefty, he can pitch around them as well and then try to go after Wainwright. So I think that there are plenty of ways for Tehran to succeed. I think that playing lefties against him when you have a lineup like this is a good way of getting yourself like 4 or 6 points, because they're going to get 2 or 3 walks. But apart from him walking them, I don't want to take any other risk. And I do think that at 8,000, it's going to be a sneaky play that a lot of people are not going to be on. I'm going to double check that, because that is my intuition based on what I know. And I do like to check what Roto Grinders has to say, because there's a reason that they are what people pay for this kind of stuff. Louis Castillo, 49%. That's about what I would have expected. Still far, far too low for this slate. And then Tehran is only projected to be about 10% owned. For 8,000, that's not bad at all. I would honestly take that for the lineup that the Cardinals put out. If they had more left-handed options, or if they had been interested in splitting up the lineup more, putting a lefty in the middle of 5 righties in a row, then it would have been a much better scenario for the Cardinals and much harder to play Tehran. But given everything, given the way he pitches, given the construction of their lineup, Tehran is absolutely one of the sneakier GPP plays today. Oh boy, the pain. And then if you're looking at Wainwright, Wainwright has been also middle of the pack lately, 7.5. Carpenter has not been doing well lately, and I think you should watch out for that. But any Carpenter against any righty, especially one with as significant splits as Tehran, is always going to be a good play. But if you just look at the last week, and this is symptomatic of Carpenter's entire season, he's walked 20% of the time and struck out 16% of the time, a 150 batting average with a 546 OPS, a 0.50 ISO, a 275 WOBA. He's 4,000, and there are going to be other plays that you could get at first and third that I would say might be in better spots. As much as I generally like Carpenter, and I used him as a one-off last year almost any time the Cardinals played a righty. But until he gets back into form, I'm not really going to go there. Markakis, though, I really, I was getting into it. Wainwright over the last couple of weeks, over his last couple starts, a 7.5 strikeouts per nine, meh. 1.5 walks per nine, that's good. One even whip, that's fine. A 5.25 ERA, but a 4.10 FIP and a 3.02 xFIP, which means that he has been pitching significantly better than the numbers would even indicate. The one problem I have here is that, as I've talked about multiple times, the Braves strike out, one of the least in the league. They make contact all the time. They have no problem playing small ball. And this is not a team that Wainwright is going to be able to take advantage of. He is going to be better against the teams that don't mind strikeouts and don't play small ball, not the ones who are going to do whatever they can to get on base and then steal if they can. So I absolutely love the Braves as one of the top stacks here. I think that, Wainwright has entered the dusk, the gloaming, if you will, of his career. And while I've talked about this as well, when pitchers get to that age, they're always going to have those starts where you're like, oh man, is he back? Is he like 26 again? But they go right back to, being a 38-year-old. So while Wainwright, is going to show you stuff sometimes, I would take him against the Marlins. I would take him, against a struggling Pirates team, but I would not take him against this Braves team, and I'm going to be all in. If you're looking at who's hot for the Braves recently, Donaldson and McCann have been fantastic. Austin Riley, got a home run in his first start. He's getting the start again, batting sixth. I don't know if you want to take a chance there, but at 3,400, it's a decent play. I would rather have Donaldson, given his recent form, at 4,200. But, I think Austin Riley is a decent pivot down within the same stack. And then, Acuna, Swanson, and Freeman and Markakis are all fantastic plays. All of them are significantly underpriced. In this matchup, Acuna and Freeman should be over 5,000. Markakis and Swanson should be 4,600 to 5,000. And they are 4,500 for Acuna and Freeman, 4,000 for Swanson, and 3,900 for Markakis. This is a cheap enough stack in a good enough spot that it will let you take 4 or 5 people and still fit in Luis Castillo, which I think is an absolutely fantastic thing. So that should do it for that game. Let us move on to the next game, and my number one stack, slightly over the Braves. The Toronto Blue Jays. Oh, Dylan Covey is so bad. I'm not as big a fan of the Blue Jays offense as most. I think that they're overrated. Not Vlad Guerrero. That dude is going to be something for a very long time. But the Blue Jays as a whole, Eric Sogard's been punching above his weight. Smoke has been cold. Rowdy Tella's cleaning up is not, he's hit or miss as you get. Teoscar Hernandez just got sent down to the minors for Urania, who's a terrible hitter. McKinney's been okay, but is a weak bat. Danny Jansen. Let me go through some of these numbers for you guys to give you the specifics, because it is really, really sad. So like I said, Vladdy Guerrero over the last week has an OPS of 1.241 with a WOBA of 505. Awesome. Grichuk, an OPS of 1.103 with a WOBA of 446. Fantastic. Big fan. Those are going to be my 2 favorite guys. Galvis is next up. He's batting 350. And by the way, I should have said this too. Guerrero's ISO is 412 and Grichuk's is 444. So those are my 2 favorite plays of the day. And, as much as I like Donaldson, and the kid for Atlanta, I'm 100% Vlad Guerrero at third base today against Dylan Covey, and I'll get to his numbers in a little bit as well. So you have Guerrero, Grichuk, and Galvis, who are the 3 Blue Jays who have been absolutely smoking hot lately. And then this is the funny part. Over the last week, The fourth best Blue Jay has been Teoscar Hernandez, who they just sent down for hitting terribly. So that just goes to show you that this might be, as much as I love this stack, a place to take like a mini stack. Maybe you take 5 from the Braves and 3 from the Blue Jays. Take the Vlad, Grichuk, and Galvis because, again, you want to get bats here. Covey is that bad, but these guys are not in good form. Granted, this is a great get-right spot, and I am going to have some of Sogard. I am going to have some Rowdy Tellez. I'm not going to take a chance on Smoke. I'd rather take Tellez at first base. If you look at the last week, Smoke's had 18 plate appearances with a 0 batting average. He got on base once with a walk. His ISO is 0, obviously, 230 WOBA. So Smoke is about as cold as it gets. Tellez hasn't been much better, but he's been better. And I'll take the matchup against Dylan Covey as well. Granted, with Smoke being a better left-handed hitter, Tellez has been in much better form. And then Sogard has been cooling off. Like I said, he's been punching above his weight, but still leading off dual position eligibility. I don't mind taking him at second base. So, I have McKinney listed in the wrong position. Okay, I don't know how that happened. That was an error of some kind. Anyway, so Dylan Covey, to get to that point, because that is the other thing, Dylan Covey has been one of the worst pitchers in baseball over the last couple of weeks. His strikeouts per 9 is 4.8, which means he's unusable even if he was doing well. His walks per 9 is almost 8, which means that he can't stop letting people get on base. 1.71 whip, which just goes to show you he can't stop letting people get on base. And this is one of the fun things, right? You look at Dan Straley, who's pitched slightly better than him, but still one of the worst pitchers in baseball. His whip is 2.19 and his BABIP is 3.8 or 387. Dylan Covey, his BABIP against is 222. So even when people are making contact, they're getting unlucky, and he still has a whip of 1.71. His ERA is 5.79, and just to show you how lucky he's gotten, his FIP and his xFIP are both 7.39, which are by far the worst on the slate, worse than Straley, worse than anybody else. So Covey has been as bad as it gets lately. I am all over Toronto. Now, while I was talking, I believe the Toronto and Pittsburgh lineups have come out. So let me double check that I have everything correct. Rowdy Tellez is not playing. Oh, no. That's not good for the Blue Jays. Why would they do that? Well, that narrows that down. So we have Sogard, Vladdy, Smoke, then Grichuk, then Galvis, Drury, who's been absolutely terrible lately, and then McKinney in the 7, who again has not been that great. Jonathan Davis, who's hitting 0, and then Danny Jansen, who is also hitting 0 over the last week. So much more than before. Without Tellez there, I'm going to be much more taking the 3, the mini stack of Blue Jays here, and trying to take the 5 bats or a 4-3-1 with a 1-off, getting the most Braves and then the Blue Jays next, because that is not good. As bad as Dylan Covey is, and I'm not going to play him, and I don't think you take a chance on him. That is really, really bad. So let's update that. We got Drury and number 6, and then we have Jonathan Davis, the lead singer of Korn, who decided to pursue a career in baseball, batting 8th. Yeah, that is, what a terrible bottom of the lineup. So yeah, take the top of the Blue Jays. Love them. Best top of the lineup, but Braves overall are going to be far and away. So let's move on there. Oh, you know what? I didn't talk about Stroman has not been in good form recently. I should talk about the White Sox side of the game. If you look at the numbers for Stroman, he has been the 5th worst pitcher, pitching today as a whole. And that winds up being the 4th worst on this slate. A 4.9 strikeouts per 9, that's awful. He's not walking that many people, and his whip is still 1.64. His ERA is 6.55, but his FIP is 6.10. Even though his xFIP is 3.91, his FIP being 6.10 means that he's still, he might be slightly the victim of a bad team behind him, but he's still going to have that bad team behind him. So while Stroman looked really great at the beginning of the year, while he's really cheap. He is going to be the second highest owned pitcher. Yeah, he's going to be over 30% owned. I think there are other people. I'd much rather have Tehran than him. There are people around that price range that are going to be better off than him. So I'll buck that ownership, especially given how hot Moncada and Castillo have been. Abreu and Alonso, not slouches either. So I would much rather take a couple of one-off White Sox bats or a two-person mini stack if you're going to play it that way. But absolutely not taking Stroman. That is going to be bad chalk for me. I don't like his upside. He doesn't strike out enough people, and people, as I talked about yesterday, are desperate for whatever value they can get. So they are going to try to cram in someone who's had good starts or who has a good name or who they've heard of, instead of taking people in a better matchup or someone who's been in better form. And the 31% projected ownership from Roto Grinders on him is enough that I'm going to be more on the White Sox bats than Stroman. The next game I talked about earlier with Trevor Williams and Eric Lauer. Trevor Williams is a good pitcher. I wouldn't say great, but he's a good pitcher. He keeps the ball on the ground, and he's been very effective recently. As hot as Reyes and Myers have been, I think they are worse off against Williams. The one thing I would say is Machado has been in. I'm sorry, guys. The hip is. It's really bad. Machado has been absolutely on fire lately. Again, I would rather have Vladdy Jr. As part of the stack, but if you want to fade him and go with Machado at third, I can totally understand that. Or if you're playing FanDuel and you want to do one in the util slot, that would be fantastic as well. But Machado is another one of my overall favorite plays. I just don't really like playing people against ground ball dudes like Trevor Williams. It's just less home run upside, and I'd rather have home run upside. I want a dude that's going to give up a bunch of home runs. On the Padres side, as I talked about, Lauer is where it gets really interesting. I talked about how over his last couple of starts, he was in Colorado, which is about as bad as it gets for a curveball dominant pitcher like Lauer. And then the start before that was against the Dodgers, and that was, noticeably bad. So if you look at his starts this season, San Francisco, he got 20 points. Arizona, good offense that was playing extremely hot at the beginning of April. He got 1.3. Then against San Francisco, again, 19. Against Arizona, again, that was still hot at that point, 10.5. Cincinnati, 12.5. Washington, 17.8. And then he still got 13.7 DKP against the Dodgers. It was just the 8 earned runs against Colorado in Colorado as a curveball pitcher that kept his price under 7,000, even though he's back home in a better matchup. He's been priced over 7,000 for this for the most part this season, with decent strikeouts. Again, that one last start was terrible, but you have to understand that was in Colorado, where someone with Lauer's repertoire is going to be more hurt than basically anybody else, because curveball dominant pitchers are hurt more than anybody else when going to Coors Field. They did a study that I linked in one of my first baseball articles for the year that I read and tried to explain. So I think that at 6,800, Lauer is going to be my favorite of the GPP plays. Again, I don't think he's safe, but I do think that he is just as safe as a lot of the more expensive guys and has just as much chance of getting you the 15 to 20, but at like $1,000 less. Plus, this is a Pittsburgh team that, as I explained before, the bottom half of that order has looked absolutely terribly lately. Let me make sure, because like I said, the order came in and it might have changed. Frazier, Marte, Polanco is playing. That's fine because he doesn't hit lefties well. Bell, Reynolds has been awful. Diaz has been awful. Elmore is playing, and I don't think the other Blues brothers are in town. And then Kevin Newman's been terrible lately. So yeah, Polanco against a lefty, not something I want. Frazier against a lefty in the one hole, not something I want. Bell has been slugging like an MVP, so you can take him while he's slugging like an MVP. But Frazier, Polanco, and then the 5 through 8 with Trevor Williams are not great options. So I think Lauer is going to be one of the sneakier plays today, and he's going to go dramatically underowned because people don't understand that mediocrity is okay when you're 6,800 and you're trying to fit in some of the more expensive bats, and you'll be able to fit in the Braves and the Blue Jays and whoever else you want because that price is significantly lower than it should be. And then I'm going to close it out here with the Twins and the Mariners. I believe the Blue Jays and the Braves have higher projected totals. The Cardinals do as well, but that's a roundup. And then the Twins would be tied for the Cardinals, and then the Mariners would be next. All of them are right around the 5-run range. So you really can't go wrong with the bats from this game, and you can go wrong with the pitchers. So ignore them and don't play them. Pineda over his last couple weeks, good K for 9, a 10.6. He's walked 2.5 for 9, which is not great. 1.36 ERA. The troublesome part here is the 4.91 ERA, and then his FIP is 6.28. So he's someone who's been pitching poorly, but has been actually worse than he's looked. So against a Seattle team who has some real mashers in the lineup, granted, a few of them have been cold lately, I'd still rather not pay that much when I can, take someone like a Lauer for much cheaper with similar upside, or pay up slightly more and get someone with more upside. Especially, again, Vegas is not the be all end all. There are some things that, we can consider that there's a reason people can make money in Vegas, like that dude that's on Jeopardy right now, who, funnily enough, and I'll tell this story one time, is the reason I'm doing DFS right now, is that guy that's on Jeopardy. So, Pineda, going to be overowned because of the name. Avoid him. Much rather take the Seattle bats. If you want to look specifically, we have Domingo Santana and Narvaez, who both should be playing. Both have been on fire lately. Haniger and Vogelback and Bruce, also decent choices. If you're looking at who's cold, Crawford, Encarnacion, and Healy have all been ice cold recently. So I would prioritize the other bats. Pineda is not the worst pitcher in the world. He does have good stuff, as you can see with his K for 9. So I don't think this is necessarily a get right spot, but I do think that the batters who have been hitting well, especially the Vogelback, Narvaez, and Bruce's, are going to be in really good spots today, even though, you can't play everybody at once. And then Eric Swanson has been really terrible lately. 5.9 strikeouts per 9, not good. 2.5 walks per 9. He is only, so this is the thing. His whip is 1.03, even though he's walking people and he's not striking people out, because his batting average against is 195 and his BABIP against is 188, which are not sustainable. That is a function of luck. Even though, and this is what is confusing, his ERA is 5.91 and his FIP and his xFIP are both 5.07. Either way, I mean, it's relatively irrelevant. It's just a curiosity for me. But the point is, Swanson has been terrible lately, and the Twins have been hitting the ball really well. They're one of the best offenses in the American League. If you break it down, a lot of people wouldn't. Rosario home run call. I really do like. Thank you. I like the Blues Brothers references. So I like Rosario a lot. The hottest Twins have been Marwin Gonzalez, Castro, and Buxton by far. Those are the 3 guys I'm going to prioritize. I like Rosario. I really like Polanco. If I'm going to call any kind of home run today, I would call it Grichuk or Vladdy Guerrero. I would also say that I really like Acuna and Donaldson's chances to get a home run. But I really think that, the Twins team is sneaky, especially Marwin, Castro, and Buxton. If you're going to go for the 2 expensive pitchers, then the bottom of this Twins lineup is as hot as any hitters in the game. If you look at it, and let me get you those numbers too, because I like backing things up with the numbers. If you look at the Twins over the last week, Marwin Gonzalez, his OPS is 1.254 with a WOBA of 515. Castro, 1.242 with a WOBA of 493. Buxton, 1.178 with a WOBA of 490. On fire, all three of them. So those are the three dudes that I'm going to prioritize. Swanson is terrible. But, Rosario, if anything, Polanco's ISO is 231, but Castro's ISO is 636. I mean, there's some home runs that are going to be hit for the Twins. And as much as I like Rosario, I would call a different player on that as a home run guy. Polanco over Rosario if we're talking about big names. But I really like one of the Marwin, Castro, Buxton to hit a home run today, if not two of them. Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, I know. Aren't those numbers? Those numbers are incredible. The way the bottom of the Twins order has been hitting, and it's not like they're going against a good pitcher. Swanson has been absolutely awful, and he doesn't strike people out. So it's not like he's going to be able to take advantage of their potential to chase. Which, if you know anything about the bottom of this Twins lineup, those guys have been known to chase a baseball, especially Castro. Buxton's looked good this year, though. I mean, Buxton's looked like the number one prospect. I don't know if, that's overstating it. I don't know if he's looked like the number one prospect, but he's looked like he's finding himself. And, I wouldn't be surprised if he is easily a 2020, 30-30 guy in the next couple of years. Yeah, he was the number one prospect. I remember. I was waiting for him. I remember watching the first game he came up. I'm a big baseball guy. I watched the first game. Springer, I watch anytime these dudes come up, I am there watching that first game. So that is everything. So I guess to sum it all up, my favorite pitchers are Castillo and then Lauer because of the savings. I really do like him a lot. Then I would really not mind taking the punt chances on apart from Lauer, on Williams and Tehran. Tehran has more strikeout upside than Williams, but is in a much harder matchup. They're only 300 separate, but those are the four pitchers that I'm going to be focusing on today. And then, like I said, the stacks that I want the most are Toronto, Atlanta, Minnesota, and then Seattle. But those first three, Atlanta, Toronto, and Minnesota, are far and away my favorite three. If you are building a bunch of lineups and you are just focusing on those three, I would not be angry. I think you would try to, that those three lineups are in such good spots that I would be over the field and I would concentrate, one-offs and whatever on those guys, especially having mini stacks with the Blue Jays, as I explained. The Grichuk and Vlad Guerrero especially have been absolutely on fire lately. So, barring any questions, I don't see anyone else here. Nothing on the Flick chat, nothing in the YouTube. So I will take my leave. I need to go take more medicine anyway before I rip my leg off. Thank you all. I appreciate your patience bearing with me while I'm dealing with the fall, dealing with the pain and my inability to sit up for long periods of time, and trying to do this video when I'm talking badly and stuttering and trying to collect my thoughts and kind of losing them. So I really do appreciate it. I'm doing my best. Like I said, I have a doctor appointment coming up soon, and hopefully we'll be able to figure something out. So I love all of you. Truly, I am so grateful. Thank you all for joining me. Have a beautiful day. Best of luck to you. If you have any questions, I'll be on Flick as much as I can. I'll be in and around, even if I'm laying down. But let's win a GPP today, guys. I love you all. Have a great night.